In this video, I'm giving the rundown of some of my favorite comic book YouTube channels. What's up guys, BJ Kicks here. I buy comics, I read them, and I review them, all for your viewing pleasure. So if you're new here, welcome. And if you're not, welcome back. Now on this channel, I do comic book unboxings, reviews, really everything in between. So if you're interested in that type of content, hit the subscribe button and then hit the notification bell. That way you're notified when new videos of mine go live. Now, if you've been watching this channel for a little while, then you know I really like comic books. I love the art. I love the stories inside. I love the collectability. But one aspect of this hobby that doesn't get mentioned enough is the community. The people in comics, whether we're talking about the creators or just the fans, are some of the greatest people that you will meet. Super friendly, super down to earth, super welcoming and caring and all the sentimental stuff. And they're really fun to be around. I really enjoy going to the comic shop, hanging out with the employees, hanging out with other customers in the store, talking about what stories I read, what stories I'm liking, what their recommendations are. And that's a really fun part of the hobby that we can't really quantify, right? You can look at a page and say, wow, that looks good. But the community is a really underrated aspect, and part of the comic book community is the comic book community specifically on YouTube. Now, before I ever turned on a camera to talk about comics, I watched a lot of comic book YouTubers. And now in the last year that I've been doing this YouTube channel, I've certainly had to cut back a lot because you can't watch content and create content at the same time. But I still watch a pretty healthy amount of comic book YouTuber videos. I have over 100 channels in my subscriber list or subscription list, and 99.9% of them are all comic book related. Chances are, if you've made a video about comic books, I've watched one of them. So with that said, I thought it'd be a great idea to just talk briefly about some of my favorite comic book YouTubers. That way, if you're new to the hobby, you're looking for more people to recommend really good content to you, then this is a great place to start. So I want to shout out a bunch of people. A couple disclaimers. One, if I shouted out everyone whose channel I liked, we'd be here for a very long time. So if you don't see your name on this list, does not mean you make bad videos or anything like that. The way I had to narrow this down is I made several categories, several types of channels. And then within those types, I just picked the top 2 or 3 that I watch all the time. So literally the measure of how you get on this list is how often I watch your videos. No knock to you. Now, before we get into this list, I want to give a quick shout out to our channel sponsor. Of course, the channel sponsor is Organic Priced Books. If you're looking for collected editions, trade paperbacks, omnibus, oversized hardcovers, they really are the best place to go. They have the quickest shipping. They package in these bulletproof boxes. Your item is definitely guaranteed to arrive safely, and you'll have a lot of information about the package at every step of the way. If the order gets delayed by the publisher or the printer, you'll get notified of that. And it's really something that you don't get anywhere else. So all that said, if you want to save $2 on every order at Organic Price Books, you can use the coupon code BJKicks. Like I said, it'll save you $2, and it goes a long way toward helping this channel move forward. So shout out to Organic Price Books for sponsoring this video. Now, we can get into the list. Now, like I said, I actually made a list with several categories of comic book channels, and it looks like there's 5 categories total. And we're gonna start out with the category that I like most, and that is comic book reviews. Now, when it comes to comic book reviews on YouTube, there's really one channel that sticks out above all the rest, and that is Pop Culture Philosophers. Pop Culture Philosophers does a weekly comic book review hosted by Rockin' Robbie Billups, where I'm pretty sure he's like a manager at a comic book shop. So he has access to books a little bit earlier than the general public does, and he uses that to his advantage. This list comes out every, sometimes Tuesday night, and at the latest, it'll come out really early Wednesday morning, in plenty of time for you to watch his entire video before you set foot in a comic shop. And what I love about Rockin' Robbie's videos, because there are several comic book YouTubers that do Wednesday reviews, but Rockin' Robbie reviews like everything. Like, he reads so many books. So chances are, if there's some indie series that no one else is talking about, Rockin' Robbie's reading it, and he's letting you know whether or not that issue is a go. So Rockin' Robbie Billups definitely takes the crown for weekly comic book reviews. Another channel that I watch a lot is actually one who's a pretty good friend of mine. So my friend Laura and her husband Scott have a channel called Married with Comics. Now, as you can tell, they're a married couple and they talk about comics, and that's just an angle that not a lot of other YouTubers have. I think I could think of one, the Dorkeries. But anyway, Laura and Scott, every week they pick up their pull list, they tell you what they're reading and why they're reading it. But what I love about Laura and Scott's channel is, unlike me, they don't have a huge, massive to-read pile. So most of the books that they recommend, they've actually read them and can tell you why you should continue reading them. So that's really dope. And what Laura likes to do is she'll read one series and maybe compare it to another series from the past. So if you've got your taste developed in comics, this is a great place to look, because she can tell you, oh, if you like this, you'll love that, and so on. It's a level I aspire to be at my comic book reviews. So huge shout out to Laura and Scott. I'll leave a link to their channel in the description, and all of the channels that I mentioned in this video. So that is the comic book reviewer category. Now, next up, I like to watch a lot of videos that go over comic book history, because I am a YouTuber, but I'm newer to the hobby, right? I started reading comics just over 2 years ago, and there's like 80 plus years of comic book history to catch up on. And so in my spare time, I like to watch videos that will inform me of the history of some of my favorite characters, or maybe characters that I'm not super interested in reading, but I still want to know about. So when I want to do that, there's a couple of channels that I look to first. One of them is called Variant. And Variant, I don't know if they're called Variant Comics or just Variant. It's been a while. But what they do is they do a lot of top 10 lists, a lot of top 5 lists, a lot of like character history videos where they say, hey, here's the history of Daredevil. Here's the origin of John Stewart. Here's the origin of Superman, of Icon, and some lesser known characters too. So if you're looking for like a general history of certain characters, recommendations for like where to start reading characters, I think they do a really, really good job of that specifically. They're definitely more tailored to like the general comics fan, or to the person who may have learned of comics from other media like TV and film, but they're a great medium, I think, between the two sides. The next channel that I look at when it comes to comic book history is a channel called Comic Pop. Now, Comic Pop, they recently split up into 2 different channels, Comic Pop and Comic Pop Returns. But what they do is, or their bread and butter is a show called Back Issues, where Sal will take a trade paperback or a hardcover. He'll basically be like, hey, this is, well, this isn't a good example. This is a compilation. This is The Wake by Sean Gordon Murphy and Scott Snyder, right? And he's got him and his 2 friends and sometimes his wife, and he'll read the story and basically explain it to them as if they're 5 years old, and thus explaining it to us. And so what you get is a very detailed plot overview. And so you know exactly what happened in a story. Plus you get their thoughts on it with a lot of funny commentary along the way. But you get that without having to read the comic. So like I said, I like to do this for lesser known stories that are hard to get your hands on, or for stories or characters that I don't really want to collect and read, but I still want to know what happened. Back Issues is a great show for that, and I definitely recommend them. You'll certainly be entertained. Now, the last channel that I look at when it comes to comic book history, and kind of along those same lines, reading stories without reading stories, is Comic Storian. The big bread and butter for Comic Storian's channel. Of course, he does the where to start and who's this character, who's that character, but they also do like these full events where it's basically like you're watching motion comics and he reads the comics while he flashes the images on the screen. Of course, they're like kind of abridged because you don't want to get into like copyright issues. But if you've never read Avengers vs. X-Men and you want to still experience the artwork without filling your house with books, Comic Storian is a great channel to do stuff like that with. So that's the comic book history section. Those are the channels that I most often go to when I want to learn about a certain character or run. Now, the next category is a category that I really like, but can be kind of dicey. So I'll explain a little bit. But this section is industry analysis. Now, if you're into comics and you're heavy into comics, then eventually you'll probably start following comic book news. This writer's taking over that title. This writer's leaving that title. This book is getting canceled. This new series is starting. And when you want to follow comic book news, you kind of get the same thing you get with regular news. There's not a lot of news anymore. There's a ton of opinion. And with that, people can kind of inject their political ideologies on one side or another, and it can just get really divisive. When it comes to industry analysis, there's really one channel that I watch more than anyone else, because while he does have his political leanings, they're not like at the forefront of every video. And of course, I'm talking about Comics by Perch. Perch does a really good job at really explaining a situation objectively, even if he does put his own personal feelings into his analysis after the fact sometimes. But one thing I love about Perch's channel is a certain video that he does where he will analyze the sales of a specific run. How was Batman Hush received? Did it sell well, really? How was Tom King's Batman run? Did it really fall off as badly as people say it did? And so on and so forth. And so if you're looking for industry news and reaction videos, Perch does like 3 to 4 videos a day sometimes, and they're all generally pretty solid. And they come out quickly. So he's one of the channels that I follow when I really want to talk about comic book news. There are other channels, but like I said, a lot of them really kind of, there's a very fine line between like analysis and being critical and being like mean-spirited. And unfortunately, a lot of comic book channels cross that line. So Perch stands out in a category all his own for the industry analysis. Now, the next section is probably one of my favorites, if not the top thing that I watch on YouTube, and that is the collected editions community. Over time, I've just kind of fallen into this community. I like hardcovers. I like the omnibus format, and there's a lot of people on YouTube that like it as well. I think they look great in your room. They look great on video, and they're a great way to catch up on stories inexpensively, or expensively, depending. But anyway, I buy a lot of hardcovers, and the one channel that I watch more than anyone else that talks about hardcover collections is, of course, Near Mint Condition, hosted by the Uncanny Omar. Now, sometimes he does get help from his wife, the Astonishing Melanie, or even his 2 cute little kids. I used to call them the cutest kids on YouTube until my daughters decided to make cameos in my videos. But Omar has like a near encyclopedic knowledge of like every comic book story, event. It's like he read everything. But another great thing is that Marvel has an inside scoop, insider relationship with a lot of the publishers, most notably Marvel. So Omar gets to announce which comics are coming out, which omnis are coming out way before anyone else. So if you want to get the news about collected editions, Omar's the guy to follow. But also he does overviews, he does reading orders, he does advanced looks. And like I said, he's got so much knowledge of the comics. He's a really good person to listen to if you want to know, should I read this story or not? So that's Near Mint Condition, and that's definitely my favorite collected editions channel out there. Another one I got to shout out is my homie Marcus, aka the Mad Dog. Now, Mad Dog Comics doesn't just focus on collected editions, although he does have his show called Whale Watch, where you can find out which omnis are going out of print and go ahead and buy them before the prices go super high. But beyond that, he does a great like where to start series where you can learn about where to start reading certain characters and storylines. He does other overviews and analysis of like specific artists, writers, or runs and reviews those. He just recently did like a retro review of Watchmen. I really love Mad Dog's channel, and he's a great dude. So if you're out there, Mad Dog, woof woof, shout out to you. Definitely love his channel. I'll leave a link in the description of this one. Now, the next person I like to watch is OmniDog. So OmniDog's Vault is a YouTube channel that's been here a long time. And he's a member of the Omnibus Collectors group, or like the Omni Bros. There's a lot of them. There's the Minister of Comics. There's Riley, who's the Omnibus Collector on YouTube. But anyway, Jess is, he's an older guy, And he's really, really cool. Like, he's not into like divisiveness or anything like that. And he likes a lot of Silver Age stories. So I like to watch his channel. He does several streams. The one that I watch the most is called Batter Days in the Bat Cave, where basically they talk about everything Batman, but also like DC Comics and sometimes Marvel too. It's kind of just anything in the Batcave. But him and Taylor, the Minister of Comics, they do a great live show where they'll read stories and review them. Jess also does kind of preview shows, looking at what omnis are coming out and stuff like that. And they're just great people. He's just a great dude. So I would recommend Jess's channel because I watch that one a lot too. And let's see, the last channel that I'll shout out in the collected editions community is Joachim Comics Center. Now, Joachim has been going through some like life changes. He went from like collecting all the omnis to really downsizing and being more of an essentialist or a minimalist in some people's eyes. And so he's got a lot of videos lately talking about how he collects and how to avoid like FOMO and some of the pitfalls of the hobby. And I really like getting his perspective. Plus, he's got a beautiful space. He puts a lot of effort into his videos. And here recently, he started a series called Finding Fandom, where he interviews other prominent collectors and people in the YouTube community. He talks to them for about an hour, and that's really, really cool. I love seeing those conversations. Honorable mention, another person that does those interviews is Small Town Collectibles. He does a series called 10 Questions. I really like seeing that every week too. But Joachim Comic Center, he's become a friend of mine. We've talked several times, and I really love his videos and his outlook on collecting. So he gets the last spot in the collected editions field. So great channels, great people to watch. And now, the final category that I wanted to bring up is newcomers. Now, I'm no, like, I don't know. I was going to say I'm no spring chicken, but that means like the opposite of what I'm trying to say. I've not been here a long time. I started doing these videos almost a year ago next month. And so the people that I'm going to shout out are people that have been doing videos for as long as I have or newer. That's what I consider a newcomer. So the first one that I'll shout out is omnibuddy. Omnibuddy started about the same time I did. His name is Mitch, and I've gotten to know him recently. And I really like his videos. I like his quality. I love that he's got like a set space, and he's like, look, if I'm going to buy new books, I got to get rid of the old ones first. I really like his videos, and he's on the rise. I think he just hit 500 subscribers as well. Maybe he's up around 700. But anyway, give him a follow. He's one of the homies. The next one I'm going to shout out is a lot newer, and that is Omnination Comics. Omnination, aka Day Day, is just a really fun dude. He likes collected editions like I do, but he's just got like this infectious laugh and personality. And his channel has got really good quality videos. My favorite is the video he does with his niece every month, showing off the omnibus haul, or the omnibus as she calls them. Really, really cool channel. I'm really excited to see how he takes it forward in the future as one of the homies that I talk to a lot. And the last person that's in the little group chat that we have is Noah. And his channel is called Noahverse. Now, Noah would be like the newest out of everyone that I talk about today. But Noahverse is really cool. He's a huge Spider-Man fan. He just got featured in the Hangout. We just did a stream together last week. But he's really, really cool people. And I really like just his style. So he's got a video where he went to Comic-Con and bought some signed books. Really fun stuff. So you should check him out as well, as he's on the rise. I think he's trying to get his 100 subscribers. That way he can get a custom link at the end of his YouTube. So check him out. I'll leave the link in the description. And there is one more channel that I want to shout out. And I don't know if he or Noah is the newest out of the group, but this one is called The Comic Book Report. And Dominic, who's a member of the K-Squad, is just really, really cool dude. Like I said, I've gotten to know, or not really gotten to know him, but I've gotten to know him through his videos here recently. What he does is what I love most is just a bunch of comic book reviews. Typically, he reviews trade paperbacks or omnibus, but he'll read the full story and give you his thoughts on them. Sometimes they're spoiler filled, sometimes they're mildly spoiled, but I really like his approach. He does these really cool voiceovers at the beginning of each review. And this month, he and Mitch are doing, and Married with Comics as well, are doing like Halloween themed videos. So I'm someone who doesn't read a lot of haunted books. Like I don't get into scary stuff. So I like being able to watch their reviews and say, okay, was this one good? Should I check it out? Should I not? So the Comic Book Report is a great channel if you just want to get a perspective of someone who's read a book and can tell you whether or not you should read it too. So that's the last category. As you can see, I watch a lot of comic book YouTubers. And like I said, if you weren't mentioned on this list, that does not mean you have a bad channel. I could have easily named 10, 15, 20 more channels that I watch all the time, but there just wasn't enough room on the list. So I hope that if you're just someone who loves consuming comic book content, then maybe I shouted out some names that you hadn't heard of and maybe you enjoy those channels too. Speaking of the comic community, it's not just on YouTube. The community exists all over the place. If you want to join a really cool crew of people that love comics and love talking about them, then you should join the K Squad. The K Squad is my private community on Facebook and now also on Discord, where we talk about comics, we talk about games, we talk about toys, action figures. We really have a good time, and depending on, you know, what your preference is, right? If you want to join really cool activities like our book club or our fan art cover swaps, then you should join the K Squad on Facebook. If you just like being a part of really cool ongoing threads and fun conversation, then you should join the Discord. But either way, there's something for everybody, so I'll leave the links in the description below so you can join the K Squad on whatever platform fits you best. Now, hope you saw something you liked in this video, and if not, hey, till next time. You can always buy what you like, just make sure you read what you buy. And be nice to others, because kindness makes the world go round. Peace.